So it seems that news surrounding the upcoming Bond 26 is coming every sort of 3 to 4 weeks. That's certainly what it feels like. And Deadline have dropped an article recently talking about the upcoming Bond 26 casting and potentially what the story will entail. We'll take a quick look at the article, and first up it's from a guy called Baz Bamigboy, who has in the past given reliable information regarding James Bond movies. So his scoops generally do have a track record of being somewhat reliable, fairly reliable. He goes on to say, Denis Villeneuve will embark on the search for an actor to play the world's most famous fictional spy James Bond next year when he completes production on Dune Part 3. So first up, it does appear that no casting has been looked at the moment. That doesn't mean that Amazon don't have ideas and haven't suggested names, but it does mean that casting hasn't started yet. So anything that is floated is pretty much just that. It's just a rumour until the casting gets underway. And that is going to be after Dune Part 3 is in the can, so next year. Hopefully in the earlier part of the year, but the article does go on to give a few sort of indications that it could be later in the year, because they are looking at a slightly later release date than personally I would have liked, but it is what it is, so we will just take that. And it goes on to say that those familiar with the matter tell us that the director and his collaborators are seeking a fresh face to take on the mantle of 007 in Bond 26. Also, James Bond will be male, as written by creator Ian Fleming, and importantly, will be an actor who hails from the British Isles. So, a couple of bits to take away there. They are looking for a fresh face, so that could potentially mean that they're looking younger. It could more likely mean that they're looking for somebody that really at the moment isn't a well-known name. So straight away you're taking out the big names: Tom Hardy, Tom Hiddleston, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, people that have already been floated that are very popular. Henry Cavill, they potentially are going to be off the table if the director and the producers are looking for a fresh face, an unknown actor. I do like the fact that they have to stipulate that James Bond will be male. There has, across the years, been talk about making James Bond female. Realistically speaking, just write a good female spy. Leave James Bond to be male. Ian Fleming wrote these books like 70 plus years ago, and Bond has always been a male. It's a male character, so I don't know why they really need to reiterate that, but it's nice to actually see it in black and white that Bond will be a dude. So moving on, it says, frankly, 99.9% of names we've heard speculated online so far won't make the cut. Those in the know tell us the ideal approach is to cast an unknown, possibly in his late 20s or early 30s, to play what Fleming called a blunt instrument. The lethal but extremely dull, uninteresting man to whom things happen. So again there, that is telling us quite a lot of information. They are definitely looking for an unknown actor, or somebody earlier in his career that isn't really a big household name. To a degree, what Daniel Craig was when he was cast in Casino Royale back in 2005. The article does go on to say if that criteria is stuck to, that means favourites such as Tom Hardy, 47, Idris Elba, 53, and Henry Cavill, 42, presumably don't match what Villeneuve and producers David Heyman and Amy Pascal and the execs over at Amazon MGM Studios are leaning towards. Also consider that by the time Bond 26 begins shooting, both Aaron Taylor-Johnson and Jack Lowden will be 37 years old. Will they be too old? So as we discussed, that potentially means that a lot of the names that we have heard floated are off the table. We could be looking at someone completely fresh, a name we potentially haven't heard of yet. The article does go on to talk about what we can potentially expect from the script as written by Stephen Knight for Bond 26. There's a sense from the many conversations I've had that Knight's going back to Bond's beginnings as a Royal Navy commander before being recruited to MI6, the UK's foreign intelligence agency, to perhaps chart how Bond attained 007 status. I want to stress this is what I'm hearing, but to caution that none of this is confirmed or fully formed because the script is still being written and the direction of travel is still up for grabs. Now that straight away, for me, gives me a slight red flag. I hate to say it, but I really don't want another origin story. It feels like we've just had one. Yes, Casino Royale was back in 2006, but it was only 5 movies ago. I really am a little bit skeptical that if we are going back to another origin story predating Casino Royale, it would have to be done in a way that is new and fresh. I wouldn't want to see it going over any of the same sort of beats that we got in Casino Royale, because potentially Bond in the Navy could be quite an interesting take. We've seen Bond in naval uniform very sparingly over the years, and whilst I think it could be good as a flashback, I'm also a little bit concerned that Stephen Knight is well known for writing period pieces, and I've always liked the fact that Bond is contemporary. So we'll see where this goes. I think that this does mean that we might be looking at a very young Bond at the beginning of his career, and possibly a period piece. I hope not. I hope it stays contemporary, but we'll see. We've got a long wait ahead of us for this film. The article does go on to say, could Bond be played by a non-Caucasian? I ask sources. He could, came the reply. As always, well, nearly always, it comes down to this. Are they right for Bond? Are they right for the story that Villeneuve and Stephen Knight are trying to tell? And then the article finishes by saying that an unprecedented number of applicants have already sent in their pitch to play James Bond to the production. Every name you've heard of, and many you've never heard of, a well-placed mole revealed. We've been flooded, but understand that the casting process has not begun, and it won't until Denis finishes the Dune movie, they continued. And it also then goes on to say that our sources indicate that the film will be released in 2028. So potentially, looking at where we are now, it could be another 3 years away, giving us the absolute longest that we've ever gone between Bond movies. So I was hoping something would be a little bit earlier, but this is saying potentially 2028, with filming due to take place in 2027. And then finally it says that there's a lot of talk about the movie premiering in the favoured November slot that a lot of Bond movies, certainly since GoldenEye, have premiered in. So it could be a bit of a wait. It's definitely telling us one thing, that potentially everything that we heard in terms of casting is irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything. Casting hasn't begun, and it won't for some time. So we will see where this story goes. Bond at the beginning of his career, still in the Navy, could be interesting, although, as I've said, personally speaking, I would like it to be contemporary, not a period piece. But we'll see where they go with this story. The story probably hasn't been written to a degree yet. They're probably still fleshing out what they want this story to be. So we have time. We'll see what happens. We'll follow this production, but that is something that definitely we need to be thinking about. So there we have it. Let me know down in the comments what you think of this news. Are you excited for potentially the roller coaster that is the next few years, let's be honest? And what do you think of the fact that casting is going to begin at some point next year? Bear in mind we're in October now, so theoretically casting could begin as early as January. I suppose it depends whether Denis will be completely finished with Dune Part 3, which would mean it's later in the year, or whether once he's finished the actual shooting of Dune Part 3, he could then move into casting for Bond 26. So in which case we might get something earlier in the year. But let me know down below what you think of this news. Are you getting excited for Bond 26? Would you like it to be a period piece or something in the sort of contemporary age? And I'll be back next week with another video. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to this channel if you like the content. It really does help build this this channel, this journey that we're on. And I'll catch you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.